Grognards of Gaming, and I am Rob the Grognard Dog, and with me, as always, is my good friend.
Miracle Mike.
And joining us once again is our guest from last show, and now a Grognard panelist in his own right, Paul.
Don Paulie.
What is it? What's your Grognard name?
Don Paulie.
Don Paulie. Right, I like
The
that.
nickname some friends gave to me long ago, and that's a whole story unto itself.
Yeah, all right. I like it. All right. Well, today, the three of us are going to be talking about thematic storytelling or themes in our role playing games. So I know that you guys had suggested that, you inquired, are we going to do like that John Cusack high fidelity top five that we often do? We can, we don't have to. Uh, what I think I would like to start the show with is a little bit of an academic discussion about themes themes and storytelling. So um, back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, there was an Italian writer, academic, and his name was Carlo Gozzi, Gozzi, Carlo Gozzi, and he was from Venice, and Gozzi analyzed storytelling. And one of the things that he came up with in his analysis, um, probably around the turn of the 19th century, was when he came up with this. He came up with the notion that all storytelling can be distilled into 36 themes. And so, in around 1917, a French fiction writer by the name of Georges Polti. Polti. I don't know. I don't speak French, but Polti. It sounds like an Italian name, but he's a French guy. Um, he actually wrote a book. He continued Gozzi's research, and he tried to figure out, are there more than 36? Can we distill the 36 even further? And what he decided was that Gozzi got it right, actually, that he could neither find more themes nor distill it any further. And so he wrote a book called 36 Dramatic Situations, which was published in 1917. And so in this book, uh, Polti lists and discusses the 36 themes that he and Gozzi, separately but in continuation, came up with. So here's what I would like to do, and tell me if you don't think this is a good idea. But let me read the 36, and then I will turn it over to you guys, and you can discuss your top fives. You could say if you feel that something was missing from the list. You came up with something that Gotzi and Polti did not, or whatever. So does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
That does. You scared me for a minute there, Rob. You scared me for a minute. I was hoping you weren't getting down to, Hallmark Channel only has one or two. But, but yeah,
No,
sure. Go
no,
ahead.
no. All right, so I got to put up my reading glasses on here. All right, so the 36 themes by Carlo Gozzi and Georges Polti. So they go as follows: supplication, like asking for help; deliverance; crime pursued by vengeance; vengeance for kin; pursuit; disaster; falling prey to cruelty or misfortune; revolt; a daring enterprise; abduction; the enigma; obtaining, the MacGuffin, what have you; the enmity of kinsmen; the rivalry of kinsmen; murderous adultery; madness; fatal imprudence; involuntary crimes of love; the slaying of a kinsman unrecognized. In other words, you don't realize the person is your kinsman and you slay him or her; self sacrifice for an ideal; self sacrifice for a kinsman; all sacrificed for passion, the necessity of sacrificing a loved one, the rivalry of a superior or of an inferior, adultery, crimes of love, the discovery of the dishonor towards a loved one, obstacles to love, and enemy loved, which always reminds me of Enemy Mine, one of my favorite sci-fi movies from the 80s, and enemy loved, ambition, conflict with a deity, mistaken jealousy, erroneous judgment, which means to be like to be wrongly judged, remorse, the recovery of a loved one, and the loss of a loved one. Those are Gotzi's 36 dramatic situations or 36 themes. All right, I turn it over to you, Grognards. Have at it.
So as I was looking at a list, I didn't go that deep, which is okay. And it's interesting again because some of them I've covered because I've kind of limited myself to what we've done in role playing games. So I know like we have not. Well, I can't even say that. I'm sure adultery and murderous adultery may have come up, but it's probably a less common theme in games.
Mhm.
Um, I basically made a list of five. You know, thinking if we were going to do a top five or not. It actually started as a list of more than that, and I kind of collapsed them. And I'll go over and explain them very quickly, and then Paul can do the same, and then we can take the discussion from there. That's okay. We don't even have to do like in order. So the five areas I was looking at that I thought were most common, and these three were originally separate: capture the flag, save the princess, scavenger hunt. Basically, you are going to find and retrieve something. That is a very common
Mhm.
theme in a role playing game. Backstory exploration, and we were talking about some of this last time, where you know, we've talked about how do you give an individual character time to shine. You know, take a few sessions and go through something in their backstory, and the rest of the characters support them. So the backstory exploration stories, escort or bodyguard duties, help deliver somebody here or there, so on and so forth. Solve the mystery, is one of them that we're doing. And the one that I've been recently introduced to, which I find extremely interesting, and I'll tell you exactly where I got it, was from Critical Role. We've talked about Critical Role before. They had the Exandria Unlimited, one of the Exandria Unlimited series, um, uh, that was not quite dystopian. It was historical, but I grouped this with dystopian type areas. The reason I did was because essentially when the people made the characters for the story, and we may not have known this at the beginning when we were watching this, most of the characters died or failed, and the whole story, that there's not a happy ending story. So it's you're telling a story to tell a story, but the story doesn't. Most people think of role playing games as, it's a happy ending. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do this. But it's also interesting to explore that other side of things where you're telling a story to get to a certain point, but it doesn't mean you're going to succeed. It means you're going to complete the story. So those are the areas that I came up with. And
Right.
Paul,
And
if you
that
will.
harkens back to like old school gaming because you didn't when we started playing Beck Me or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, they, there was no expectation for a happy ending. You were lucky if your character survived.
This is
you know?
true. Ravenloft, the
Rob and I
original,
had
not the new one, but the original. Yeah.
Rob and I had a similar conversation a couple weeks ago
Tomb of Horrors is
about
another good one that was designed to kill characters. Uh,
yeah,
so, yeah.
that was something that came up in my thought process too. Oh, because what comes to mind is Kirby running the village of Hamlet. I think it was called. It was like that level one first edition game where the whole idea was you cre- you created this character, they die,
Yeah.
and it was the way to teach you how to deal with that. But some of the ones that Rob mentioned by the academics kind of crossed over into some things I put down. But I also came up with personal growth, which I kind of can see a little bit in the character Sabah that we talked about last episode.
Right.
Because here's really young hothead. He's home now, and his family's a noble family. You have to act a certain way, and you serve the king, and it's a whole different lifestyle than what you had before. That was one that, and you see it a lot, especially in Star Wars, the story of Luke Skywalker, where he goes from whiny, annoying kid to the Last Jedi for a while, and one that Mike had mentioned, origin stories. I love origin stories. Being a comic book fan, I love a good origin story, and that's part of the process that we discussed last episode. Is I'm big on origins, as you both know.
Yes.
What else I come with? I, being a historian, I like historical fiction themes. Whether hey, they're in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars, or they're in the middle of the founding of the nation, or whatever situation. I'm a sucker for that.
So I have a question, but just an expanding question on that. Are you more into, and this is the way I think of it, alternate history or side story in history that may never been recorded? That kind of thing.
I like the side stories because it's it's part of a bigger story that gets overlooked, and many incidents in history that were part of the overall story really aren't remembered sometimes. So, I mean, I'm always a sucker for that side story, being part of it, being there. Like, well, I may not have been at Appomattox when they signed that treaty, but I was finishing up things in the Western theater. I saw that end, that kind of stuff,
Okay.
and you kind of see that a little bit in your Western game with that character, where he spent a lot of his time in like he's not at the big battles. He's not at Gettysburg. He's not at Chancellorsville. He's at Murfreesboro. And like stuff, obscure things from the West for most part of the war. And that's a whole story unto itself. That because that was FUBAR, the Confederacy at that point with those guys. But also, what I like is not so much political games, but kingmaker games where you're vying to put someone on the throne, where you're caught up in a dynastic war. Like if you're in the middle of the War of the Roses or whatever, are you working? Are you going to support the Lancastrian claimant to the throne? Or are you going to go with the Yorkists? Are you an Edward the Fourth guy or Henry the Sixth or whatever? You know that kind of thing. Would you sell out people to do what you feel is right? That kind of stuff. Like you would see that more in a modern vampire game behind
So
the
The,
scenes.
intrigue is what I'm hearing from you. I mean, so because historical fiction, that's really a genre, but it
Right.
sounds to me like what the theme that you like that is often involved in historical fiction is the intrigue.
I like the intrigue, but in a political game, a kingmaker game, it could be set anytime, really.
Yeah.
Like
So,
that.
so that brings me to my next question. That's a good segue. So the themes that you guys are mentioning, um, are they dependent on genre? Like Gotzi and Polti, their idea is that there are always these 36 themes. That's the limit. The idea is that these 36 themes can appear in any kind of genre of storytelling, whether it's science fiction or fantasy or horror or what have you. Um, Do your themes that you guys have talked about, are they dependent on genre, or do they lend themselves more to a particular genre? Like Mike, you mentioned the dystopian a dystopian theme, and when one thinks of dystopian, one thinks almost immediately of sci-fi, but there is a dystopian fantasy subgenre. It's called the Dying Sun subgenre, and I think Wizards of the Coast, probably about 15 years ago, did put out. I can't think of the name of the series, but the fellow who created the Star Wars Saga edition for Wizards of the Coast, and I'll put his name here on the screen in post production. He created this dystopian fantasy subgenre, Red Sun, Dying Sun, something like that. I'll put that here also. But the genre itself, independent of the role playing game, is called the Dying Sun subgenre, and that would be dystopian. So it can appear in other genres, but are the ones that you guys mentioned limited to particular genres? Do they lend themselves more to particular genres?
Now, mine, I think are. I tried to keep it more broad. I don't think that anyone's setting or genre is required for any of the ones that I've mentioned. Now, the dystopian one is interesting, and it, like you said, most people when they think dystopian, they think futuristic.
Mhm.
But dystopian is really about something that's failing, something that's falling apart. If you want to even look at, so think about, and I'll tag one of Paul's and think about this. Depending on how you tell it, Roanoke is a dystopian
Mhm.
story, which is
Mhm.
historical.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, dystopian can be any genre. That would probably be the one that's hardest to fit. The other ones that I had, I think they fit anywhere. You can always, be searching to rescue somebody, find something, collect something. Backstories are everybody's going to have a backstory, you know. So the escort and bodyguard duties, deliver somebody somewhere, protect them, protect this city, protect this ship, whatever you want. Those and solving mysteries happen in every genre. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think I think that they are relatively universal, like the 36. Like it's not as broad as the 36,
Right.
but yes, definitely, I think they go across genre.
Yeah. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. Uh, a lot of these can fit in any genre really. I just happen to use the historical setting in the War of the Roses as an example, but that could very well be true in big city politics and or anything. And even if you want to make a twist on it, it doesn't need to be politics. It could be a Godfather esque story too. Really, and revenge. That's that's in everything from science fiction horror to Asian action films.
Yes.
So I mean that goes everywhere too. Pretty much
Yeah.
all of them can go anywhere. It
Yeah.
depends
Yeah.
on your
Some of those
imagination.
things are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It depends on your setting where your imagination takes you.
Right. Yeah. Some of those themes are downright archetypal. I think revenge
Yeah.
stories are downright archetypal, and you'll see
Oh,
them
absolutely.
cross culturally. So, what I thought was interesting, Paul, is when you were listing your themes, the first couple of themes were more character driven, like themes that you might find in character backgrounds rather than in stories that one might tell as a game master. And I think that is because of all of our gaming fellows. You're the one. I think that you've probably GM'd the least, and I think that's because you're the way you get fulfillment from role playing is through creating these characters and really immersing yourself in the characters. That doesn't really lend itself to game master, because in game mastering,
Yeah.
there's almost a superficiality to characters. You have to play everybody, and so you can't spend a whole lot of time developing every single character. And you really are fulfilled by delving deep into a character. So Mike's themes were more storyteller themes. Your themes, at least in the beginning of your list, were more play from a player's perspective, and I thought that was very interesting. So my question is, uh, Mike as a game master and Paul as a player, and this is kind of a question I asked in the last episode when we were Paul. Do you find a particular theme or number of themes that you are drawn to when you are either running a game or playing or creating a character? Are there themes that speak to you, and why? What is it about those themes that speak to you?
So, and you guys have played some of my games, certainly. And you can agree or disagree with me because I've GM for you guys. Probably my most central and my most common theme is probably solve the mystery. So what's causing this problem? What is the overarching, who is the villain? Who is, I don't always bring the villain out in front. It's always solve the mystery is probably my primary. And then I sprinkle the other stuff in there to help support, solving the mystery or foiling you from solving the mystery or so on and so forth, misdirecting you and things of that nature. But probably my favorite story to tell is solve the mystery. It might even be also my favorite to play. I like unknowns. I like surprises. So because of that, probably solve the mystery would probably be my personal. On your list of 36, it would be the enigma, I would
Yeah,
guess.
the
So
enigma.
that
Yeah.
that would probably be my favorite thing.
Yeah, and I want to do a whole episode on running mystery stories because it's not easy to do that. So let's keep
No.
that in the back of our mind, add it to our list. Go ahead, Paul.
Um, as far as themes, do you mean as a player what I look for as a character, or
Yeah, what themes are you drawn to? I mean, you don't do a whole lot of GMing. I mean, you have done some, but you mostly focus on being a player. So,
right?
in the context of that, from that perspective, what themes are you drawn to?
I I like the solve the mystery a little bit. I am more drawn to like um, saving the day kind of things, save the world.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I like a, like it's more an adventurer's calling of sorts.
Hmm.
Whereas I'm I don't want to think too much sometimes
Gotcha. Well,
because
yeah.
my
I mean,
mind works a lot as it is. So
once
sometimes I just want to keep it real simple.
Yeah, well, once again, I mean, you're hitting on something very, very primal, very archetypal. That call to adventure is I mean, frankly, I think as human beings, because we talked about this in our last episode where we interviewed you, you mentioned that part of your process or part of what you enjoy about the process of creating a character is exploring the human psyche, and I find that to be a very interesting aspect of role playing as well. And I think that as human beings, we are not built for luxury. We are not built for an easy life. We are built. We have evolved to slay dragons, and so this call to adventure, that the hero's journey, is archetypal. It's ingrained in us. Yeah, there's nothing simple about it. I mean, you're being generous by saying, hey, I just like a simple call to adventure game, but that's something really deep. I mean, you're really hitting on something very, very deep, very psychological there.
So
And
so so you're not going to get away. What about you? What is your favorite game? You're not going to get off that easy.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you guys know I'm like the other end of the role playing game spectrum for Paul. Like I almost exclusively game master, and so um, I do very little playing, and so it's hard for me to say that I'm drawn to a theme because the way Paul is drawn to exploring a character very deeply, I am drawn to tell as many stories in as many different ways as I can, and so so I don't think it's a coincidence that we all came to this recording session. You guys had like you're thinking, let me do the top five themes, let me do my top five themes, let me think of like a list of five, and I came with 36. I mean that's not that this is a competition, but like that's how
no,
my mind works. It's like I can't I can't get enough. Like one to five themes is enough. I'm not just drawn to a few. I want to explore them all. And you're right. Like I don't think I've ever told a story about murderous adultery. Maybe I have. I mean, maybe in our Musketeer game that was. I don't. Yeah,
We came
actually,
close. We came
We came
close.
close. Yeah.
like your character started out as a servant to a nobleman whose wife. Yeah, there was a murderous
Yeah, yeah,
adultery.
there was murderous adultery there. You've told that story.
See, I don't
Yeah.
even know. I'm doing it. I don't even know it. So it's hard for me to say like what is my what themes am I drawn to? I, all of them. I just can't. I
No.
storytelling is it's in my blood. I can't. I gotta tell stories.
Now I said you gave me a Hallmark moment, but also with the list of 36, you gave me a Princess Bride moment. Yeah. Does this story have action adventure? Oh yes, sports, revenge, this, that. So, but yeah, you very much it's like, and I think about that because it's like you're the Princess Bride story. You tell them all, you try and fit them in, and you may have those themes. I've probably seen. I can't say you've done everyone in one session, but you've done 3 or 4 in one session pretty easily. Bouncing
Yeah.
around, and it's yeah, I can see that. I agree. That's
I'm
I
sorry.
that's
still have whiplash from that.
I feel like I copped out on that answer. Like I didn't really give you an answer, but I can't.
and it's interesting if you think about it
Enough answer.
because we have, and it's this is the balance here. This is the balance with these three. We have Rob, who is almost exclusively the GM, and Paul, who is almost exclusively the player, and I bounce back and forth.
Right.
So you've got the balance, across the three of us for the views. It works out well.
Yeah, it does work out well. That is a good balance. It is a good balance.
Yeah,
How
definitely.
about themes that you prefer to avoid? Are there themes that are not necessarily taboo, or maybe they are taboo, or just you could do it, but you'd rather not?
Okay, I will give you one, and so I'm a horror fan. You guys know that I'm a horror fan.
Hmm.
And I will explain this in this way. There is an author uh, who passed. Actually, he passed on Valentine's Day many years ago. So his name is Richard Lehman. Okay, in my mind, the greatest horror writer ever. And I'll tell you why. It's not. It's people say Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and they have their own favorite. Okay, um, Dean Koontz was scared to death of Richard Lehman, and he actually said so in a foreword. But I'll explain why. Richard Lehman goes after people that are real horror. So if you read any of his horror books, that some of them will have supernatural or strange aspects, but that's not the core of the horror. He goes after children, the disabled, the elderly, the people who are easy prey. And that is where a lot of his horror comes from. And he is very graphic about it. And people say if you had ever met him, he's the sweetest guy. The best, like I
Most of them
said,
are.
Dean Koontz was afraid of him. And what I mean by that is Dean Koontz said, I've gone to his house for Thanksgiving dinner. And having read his material, I'm sitting there watching him carving the turkey and wondering when he's just going to snap and kill everybody at the table. And this was a friend, but I avoid that kind of realistic, visceral storytelling. So I might do revenge, I might do, but I'm not going to go after kids, elderly, disabled, things like that. So those are probably themes that I tend to avoid because to me that's horrific.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
avoid those kinds of stories.
Paul.
yeah. Well, I won't shy away from much. I remember when we started Mike's D&D game, he sent us that questionnaire about what you would find offensive and what not. Not a lot that I find offensive. I'm I'm probably there's some things that would piss me the hell off, and I would have depending on the role I'm playing at the time. Like I would like to play a villain sometimes, but if it's gonna like if it's going to hurt children or animals, that kind of stuff pisses me off.
Yeah.
The commercials that come up on TV, or stories in the news, I go from being happy-go-lucky to wanting to kill somebody when I see those.
Yeah.
So like something like that, I would stay away from. And like as far as like Mike mentioned that author going after the the disabled, I don't find that very sporting for horror, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, I like to pray that I'll fight back, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, but
Yeah, like Jamie Lee Curtis, man.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But there's not a lot that I would shy away from other than that. And we did touch on a taboo topic in one game, and I didn't see that one coming, but it was well done. It was well played.
Dare we discuss it? I'm not sure what you're talking.
It was in the swashbuckler game.
Hmm.
His half sister.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that I did not see coming.
yeah. Well,
And
in
I,
all fairness, this is something that George Lucas even did, although I think it was probably an afterthought. But
right,
it,
yeah, yeah,
this is sort of the Oedipal theme, right? So the character doesn't know that he's related to someone that he's got feelings for, and yeah, so that's yeah. I mean, that can be uncomfortable. It depends on how you handle it, but as you say, I think you handle
yeah.
it.
Like I said, it was not anything I would do in real life. Why it's a game and no one's really getting hurt,
Hmm.
and I just play the card that was dealt me. That's all.
Right,
I
right,
like I said, I don't. There's not a lot that really bothers me that I'm like I can't do that situation again.
sure, sure. Yeah,
And I do and
go
I
ahead.
do like a darker, grittier kind of story.
Hmm.
A little bit of violence, a little bit of an R rating, because I mean we've been doing this how long? Like
Yeah,
40 years,
right,
and it's just like you know what? It's not a G-rated world. It's not a Disney world.
right.
It could be the world could be a cruel, dark place sometimes, and
Yes.
I kind of play to that. And, like it doesn't like very little about
Right. So you're speaking to tone. So regardless of the theme, you don't mind a darker tone.
it. Not
Um,
at all. In
right.
fact, I like it more.
You
Like
like
I
it.
don't. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not a Disney happy. Like I kind of like a darker, grittier edge.
So you're not
Right.
playing
I
the Looney Tunes
preferred.
game.
What was that?
So you're not playing the Looney Tunes game.
No, no, I'm not
Okay.
playing Tune. I'm not playing Tune. And
Okay.
in fact, if Evil Hat knew some of the characters that have been brought into their game system, I'd probably get a cease and desist letter.
That's hilarious. That
Because if
is
you look at their illustrations, it's like bunny rabbit characters and stuff like that. You know, like come on,
funny.
great system. I love the system. It's easy to learn and it's fun. You can do a lot with it. But I'm not a I'm not a G fan, all audience kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
I
one of the
love
things
the
I love about
experience.
Fate is that it lends itself to any tone, any theme, any
Yeah,
genre. So so
just don't read the preface.
yeah, yeah. So for me, I think it is dependent. So if I'm gonna lean into a particular theme, lean towards a particular theme, or shy away from one, it depends on a number of things. So one would be my audience, right? So I've run games for Grognards, I've run games for newbies, and I've run games for children, my own children included. And so the themes that I'm going to explore are going to be vastly different among those three groups and whatever other groups I could think of. Um, and so I'm not gonna do a story about vengeance for kin or murderous adultery if I'm running a story for my children. And I might not even do that for newbies because you want to sort of draw them in. You don't want to shock
Right.
them too much.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for grown yards like us, yeah, I'll explore those things. Um, And the other thing that I think it might depend on, for me at least, would be it would be the genre. I think that this goes back to my earlier question. Do these themes that we're talking about, are they dependent on genre? I don't know that I would want to do a murderous adultery story in a hard sci-fi game, because I mean, you can, but I just don't know that I would find that interesting. I think I would find a
Yeah.
murderous adultery theme more interesting in an historical setting. Like the court of Henry VIII or something like that. If we were to set a game in
You said earlier the Musketeer game,
the Musketeer game.
It's
Musketeer
there.
era France, and France lends itself to that sort of historical France sort of lends itself to that in
Oh,
fictional France.
absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
and I think we dealt with it
Yeah.
with yeah we dealt with that
We've
pretty
done
good.
it. And even
Yeah.
something like the Enigma, something that's very broad, the Enigma or obtaining. I would, I think you can do an Enigma story in any genre, but some genres lend themselves to the Enigma better. I think hard sci-fi is a great setting for Enigma. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and obtaining, sure, it's like 30s. You think of 30s pulp, the MacGuffin, capturing the Ark of the Covenant, whatever. Um, that's something you could do in anything, but certain genres I think are better suited for it, or rather, I probably should say it's easier to come up with ideas for certain themes in certain genres. So those are my thoughts. Any concluding thoughts, gentlemen, on themes before we end our episode?
Just one, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, which is you don't you don't have to have an entire story just wrapped around a singular theme. You gave us a list of 36. You can work them in. You can have a main one, like I said. The main part of the story is a mystery, but you can use any of those other themes to get you to that mystery. So don't think you have to limit yourself to, "Oh, I only have to do one of these." You can do them all. You know,
Yeah.
depending on the length of the story, depending on what fits the story, what fits the genre. So mix and
Is
match.
there is there a point though, Mike, where it may get unwieldy? Do you think?
So yes, because think about it this way: if we did a D&D adventure, and every session or every little portion or segment of the story was, go find this item, go find that item, go find. It gets boring after a while. So you
Mhm.
have to mix them. You have to do variety. You have to change it up. If you tell the same story over and over, or the same theme over and over and over again, um, it can get very, like I said, very boring, and not very enjoyable. You need some variety there in order to, even if you look at stories that are told, movies, books, what have you, you can take these themes and find multiples. There's going to be an overarching,
Mhm.
but they're not sticking. They're not doing the same thing over and over and over again.
And fair enough. But my question was sort of the other end of that spectrum. In exploring a variety of themes, is there a point where the multiplicity of themes could become unwieldy?
Well, even like you said, you're not necessarily, going to stuff a murderous adultery story into sci-fi. So if it doesn't make sense for the overarching theme and the genre, you don't have to stuff them all in either. You don't have to overstuff them. So yes, it's definitely a balancing act. I would agree with that.
Okay. And Paul, you were going to say.
I think when you have a campaign, sort of like take Mike's Western game, for example, where we have that one overlapping theme that goes on. Like, why is this happening? How are we going to stop it when we figure it out? That's great with the overall theme, but just to, I guess, mix it up a little bit, it doesn't hurt to overlap, and it can be related. It doesn't need to be related. Sometimes, if you take it a little lighthearted, it could be fun, or maybe something that may lead to a clue at a later date, at a later session. I mean, like Mike said, it's all in the balance.
Yeah, it's in the balance. And you
Even
said something that made me think of something. It's that it can be you can take, as a game master at least, you could take two very disparate themes that you wouldn't think really would go together, and it could be a challenge that makes the storytelling even more fun for the game master to try to work them in seamlessly into the story. And yeah.
right, take like that old Western When Dead or Alive.
Hmm.
Main character is a bounty hunter.
Hmm.
Did he always collect bounties? No, he was getting caught up in crazy little side adventures, but it didn't take away from the premise of the show any. Like one episode, he gets brought in to help settle a dispute between married men and their wives. Like something crazy will happen that to change the pace a little bit. Or one episode towards the end of the run, his client had a sheep and it got lost, and he's chasing the countryside looking for the sheep. Like something lighthearted and silly,
Right.
but never took away from the premise of the show really.
Hmm.
Because then at some point when you got the lighthearted stuff out of the way, you went back and like it's this guy I have to get or whatever, or I have to bring in this murderer or whatever. It, everything in moderation, really.
Yes.
What can be done?
Fair
It,
enough. Fair
it
enough.
can be done.
Yes.
It's up to the game master to find a way to fit it and know when to move away from the main
Hmm.
story arc and then when to move back into it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Agreed.
and I said that in an earlier episode that the game master always has to keep his toe in the water, get a sense of how the players are feeling, and that helps you gauge when to pull back, when to keep going forward.
Because really, when it's all said and done at the end of the day, gaming is an escape.
Hmm.
It gets us out of whatever's in our world for a short time and to spend time with friends too. And and sometimes if you take the story arc a little silly, a little lighthearted, it helps relieve stress too. And it kind of doesn't add pressure like, oh, we got to figure this out. It's a good little break, sometimes a little respite from the main story arc. And we've done that a few times
Oh, many,
without
many.
even knowing it.
You know,
I like
we talk about the swashbuckler game, and we'll do the episodes where it's all about the intrigue, and then we have the goat episode, and then we have the wedding episode.
I I was just thinking about that scene today
Our
and was
audience has
thinking,
no idea what you guys are talking
No,
about.
no, but they understand inside jokes. It's
yeah, it's but I was actually thinking about that in the shower this morning for some because my mind is constantly dwelling on stuff.
It really
And
is.
I was thinking like, what if that was in the Three Musketeers movie? Could you imagine drunk Porthos in the form of Ollie Reed having being bested by a goat or something like that? It would kind of remind me of that scene where they're dueling with the Cardinals men and Aaron or Athos, I guess. Like his hat's all cut in half and stuff like that. Like something silly comes out of it.
Yeah,
So it's always fun to have that situation. Really,
it is.
it is. Yeah,
keep things
themes
fresh.
and tones they kind of go hand in hand, I guess. Just as certain genres can lend themselves to certain themes more easily, certain themes can lend themselves to certain tones more easily.
Like I said, I like an edgier, grittier, darker game, but I like a good laugh too.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah,
so
sure.
it kind of works out in the end. So
Marvelous. Well, that was
whatever.
great. That was great stuff, guys. Very, very interesting. So, our next episode of Grognards of Gaming, Paul, you're welcome to join us. Don't feel obliged, but I'm gonna toss this question, at least this time, to Mike, because I know Mike will be back for the next episode. Mike, is there a subject we should delve into for our next episode?
Well, I think you hit on it earlier that you have an itch to talk about the mystery, and we have also previously, depending on how the timing works, maybe we'll do the whole thing on mystery, but you've also talked about puzzles. So maybe we hit mysteries, and if we don't hit mysteries and puzzles, maybe we'll do that in a later episode. But maybe we'll talk about setting up a good mystery story next time.
That sounds great. Well,
I,
join us next time. Yeah,
sounds
go ahead,
good.
Paul. What were you gonna
I mean,
say?
that sounds good. I have plenty of ideas
Fantastic. So it
to
sounds
kick
like
out first.
you're in,
Up and you can
right?
join
You're
us.
in.
Definitely,
I'm in.
definitely.
Fantastic. All right,
And I
ladies.
think I might one of these days I might go with an idea I was discussing with Mike, kind of to be silly,
Yes.
but we'll see.
All
We'll
right.
see.
All right. Well, I hope everyone in our viewing audience will join us next time. The three Grognards of gaming, the three musketeers, the three amigos, and we're gonna talk about mysteries in role playing games. So see you next time, everyone, and thanks for watching.